more information, look at www.ism.lt or drop us a message at msc@ism.lt. And as well, as I mentioned, there will be more events coming, so join them as well. One important thing, the speakers who will be talking today, they will share their own expertise and their views, and those views do not necessarily represent those of their organizations that they work for. So that is very important. And also at the end of the discussion, which will last for a whole hour, we'll have 45 minutes for the discussion and then 15 minutes for Q&A session. So I highly encourage you to be as active as possible. Some of you are watching this on Zoom ISM platform, some of you on Delfi TV. Hello to both parties. You can drop the messages, the questions into the messaging box, and we will do our best to deliver your questions to the speakers. So about the speakers, who are we dealing with today? First of all, we have Katja Lisanak, ISM alumna, international mobility partner, and career coach at Google. Hello, Katja. Yes, that's the first portion of.
Hello, Vadybos. Hello, everyone. Absolutely delighted to be here today. Honored, actually. So looking forward to today's session, to your questions, and to our answers, to be honest.
Thank you for joining. We also have Joe McMahon. It's complicated to introduce him in a few short sentences. He is quite an astonishing person. He is currently the COO at Same Solutions, and he's also ex-military advisor to United Arab Emirates Armed Forces, and he's also a visiting professor at ISM. Hello, Joe.
Hello.
It's wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for joining today for the discussion. And we have Vita Akstinaitė, who is Global Leadership and Strategy Program Director at ISM and Leadership Expert. Hello, Vita. Good to see you.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you.
Right, let's jump into the discussion. As I said, type your questions into the message box. And now let's start the discussion. And Katja, I would like to start with you. You have been working in large corporations for many years, and currently one of the responsibilities that you have is helping Googlers to develop their careers, right? And I believe that you as well have come across a widely prevailing notion that veteran executives are more effective on almost every front compared to young leaders. What would you comment on that?
Okay, I would like to offer a slightly provocative, maybe idea. And actually to start with the notion of leadership a little bit, right? So when you say, leadership and young leaders in reference to executives, I assume this is about being a leader, being a manager inside the corporation, inside small and medium enterprise. Whereas when I talk about leadership, I often, when I think about young leaders, I think much wider options that are available to all of us. And I refuse to compare veterans, as you call them, to young leaders. Also, I have a question: what is young and who is young and where are we going to draw the line? This is not a conversation I would like to go into. But I would like to say the following. Are young leaders, and young can be any age you define, 16, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, doesn't matter. If you feel young, you're young. Are they effective? Absolutely, yes. And you actually don't really need to go too far for examples. I spend a little bit of time looking up the most successful businesses in Lithuania. And guess some of them that are at the moment global enterprises, some of them such as Board Panda, so people maybe know boardpanda.com. Did you know that it was established by a second-year student at ISM in their bachelor's? And to me, this is an example of a leadership. Because what is a leader? Who is a leader? A leader is somebody who has a vision, somebody who can deliver results, somebody who can inspire people and communicate well. Somebody who has a successful business in their second year in the uni is definitely fits the definition of that. So, and then, there are many more. If you look at the unicorns that exploded in Lithuania tech scene in the last 5-10 years, and then you look at their founders, some of them have barely graduated out of uni, some still were at the uni when they were starting their businesses and their ideas, and who cannot call them a leader? So So your question, absolutely yes, they are effective. Young leaders are fantastic, and we do not need to compare them to anyone else.
Okay, I remember myself reading an interesting study conducted by leadership development consultancy that has concluded that young leaders can perform in terms of overall leadership effectiveness as good as well-seasoned executives, and sometimes even surpass them. Joe, I would like to address you. You have many years of experience as a corporate leadership expert. What is your perspective on this? Do young leaders are capable? Are young leaders capable of being themselves as great examples of good leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. So I completely believe that they can be, and I'd even say it's essential that they are great leaders. I would just to pick up Katja's point there on the young versus old. I totally get that. I would say really in sort of how much responsibility the leader has, and it you know, regardless of age or anything. But in terms of leaders that have just arrived or have less responsibility than a more senior leader, it is essential that they have support. Effectively, what you're trying to create, I think, is this idea of organic fluidity, right? You're trying to create a team, an organization that is fluid, that is dynamic, that acts like an organism. In fact, there's a US general called Stanley McChrystal that says you're trying to create this nuclear chain reaction between the members of your team, between these leaders. So it's essential that they are given the support and then the means to achieve that. And that would really be a function of senior leaders to create that environment for those junior leaders to be effective. I think. Yeah, I think really that the advantage of what we're calling on this, call it a young leader, is they're really at the coalface. They're really, really connected with the what we call in the military the tactical level. And I think what happens with more senior leaders is obviously by the nature of their day-to-day activities, they get more strategic. There is a disconnect between what's actually really happening on the ground and then the decisions that they're making. And it is vital for those young leaders to be really encouraged and nurtured to be able to not only feed the information from the coalface to higher up, to the more senior leaders, but also they're able to be proactive and then within certain boundaries, they're able to quickly plug gaps and be innovative, in their areas of responsibility. So yes, they can be great leaders, and I think it's essential that they are. You can't have a functioning organization without that.
I have a very quick question related to your military background. I guess one of the essential things for a leader is to have authority. And for younger people, I assume it's more difficult to establish their authority, that people would listen and do what they ask them for. What could you, advise for young, especially really young people, how to create their authority?
Yeah, so talking about the military, it's quite interesting. So there's typically quite an old-fashioned view of leadership in the military, and there's this idea of hierarchy and that. But actually, that applied to the older generation. What we're finding now, and what we call the contemporary operating environment, it's an incredibly fluid environment. They compare it to the 3-block war. So you can arrive in a situation, and you'd need to do humanitarian operations, or you'd need to do intense fighting, or you'd need to do counterterrorism. And very, very quick, you have to adapt incredibly quickly, within seconds of, minutes to that environment. Once again, if you have that authoritarian big man leader structure, you just simply can't react to that fluid environment. So authority is really pushed down as far as possible. It's really decentralized. And you really push down decision making to the lowest levels. And in fact, we have we allow people to really operate, and we really give them that freedom of action to be able to seize the opportunity. Yeah, the civilian term would be that servant leadership. Yeah, you're really a leader, and you're really unlocking the resources and the potential of your young leaders to achieve that organic fluidity.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you so much for that. Vita, are you still awake? We haven't talked to you for a while now.
That was fantastic. I'm loving it.
Amazing. You have been researching the field of leadership for many years now and working with both experienced and young leaders towards improving and developing their leadership skills. Let's imagine now, let's say a young person studying bachelor's degree, maybe a master's degree. They want to become a great leader. They want to develop like a executive career, maybe. What advice could you give them? The things they could do, the skills they should learn to future-proof their careers?
Very good question. But your question is quite complex, and I would say that it has two components, two parts to it. So one is how would you do that? And the second part, what are some specific actions or steps what you can make? So I'll try to answer both parts consequently. So first of all, talking about how. So here I would like to get a bit more academic and refer to a theory that's called social identity theory that was developed in 1980s by Teifel and Turner, so two researchers. And originally it was developed by them to explain like relationships and behaviors between people. However, what happened since then, for the last 40 years, we start using this theory to explain the connection that it has with leader identity development. So essentially, when someone comes to a leadership roles, and again, that's despite whatever your age is, you can be young in terms of experience, not necessarily age. That person, when you step into the leadership role, has two identities. So imagine this is me, self, and then this is me as a leader. So there are two separate identities. And what happens slowly with experience and building the confidence, these two identities start gradually coming together until it becomes one. So my advice for and answering the first component and question about future-proofing your career is about building and working on this leadership identity development so that this process happens faster, because without seeing yourself as a leader is very hard to act like one. And then the second answer, if you asked about something specific that people could do and some specific steps, there are a lot of models and steps and recommendations that you can find on the internet and books and so on. However, one that I would like to mention here, it would be a model called SOAR. So it's SOAR, which stands for self, outlook, action, and reflection. So it's a model, circular model that consists of 4 steps. So it's quite easy to remember. So the first step 1 for anyone, for this young leader, whoever she or he is, would be thinking about self. So me, self, what is the uniqueness of my leadership? So it might be in terms of personality, habits, behaviors, strengths, weaknesses, any of these. Second part would be the outlook. When I work, especially as I work with very different groups, one is very young and leaders that are starting career, and another group are very senior leaders, I see the difference in a way that young leaders often have troubles with team management, team performance, so essentially people skills. So self, this other step, so after self, the second step, outlook, would be around understanding and broadening your outlook, how these relationships work, how do we build that we all are different, all these speakers, everyone who connected here today are very different. So then from that second step, we go into the third step, which would be action, essentially driving action through conversation. Sometimes people struggle to have difficult conversations. There are so many difficult conversations we have to do at work in terms of performance, conflict resolution, and others. So that would be having and learning how to do these difficult conversations and through them to drive action. And a final step would be reflection, which essentially is understanding that you have to learn from what worked and from retrospective experience and inform your perspective based on that. So what my recommendation would be in terms of practical things for anyone who's stepping or are now currently in a leadership role or would like to be in one trying to apply these 4 steps, because imagine it as a circular process. Every time you complete one loop, you're becoming a stronger leader. So the further you develop, the better, the stronger leader you will become. So that would be my attempt to try to recommend something practical and useful.
And very academic as well. Thank you, Vita, for that. One thing to clarify, I think it would be safe to say that when we're saying young leaders, we're not really talking about age. It's probably mostly experience we're talking about. Somebody who hasn't been in a leadership role for many years versus the old who have been. So age itself doesn't mean you have experience. So when we refer to young leaders, we do not talk about age, but we talk about the previous experience. Katya, so from the title of your job description, I understand that you're like a mother at Google, and everybody comes to you and says, Katya, what should I do? How do I become a better leader? How do I progress my career? Is that an accurate view that I have, or is it's not?
Well, poetically speaking, a little bit. But yes, I do act as a coach and as a mentor, where people do turn to me with the questions: how can they improve? How can they approach the next step? How can they challenge themselves? How can they position themselves as a leader when they were not a leader before in the corporate world? So to Vita's point, we do work often on establishing the leadership identity and merging, the sort of me as a Katya and me as a senior leader. So what does it really mean? How do I, position this new brand in the world? So yes, quick answer to your question. I do help people.
Yeah. So do you have any go-to answers that you usually give, or something some more universal advice that you give to your colleagues?
Well, I don't want to repeat what Vita said, because I love that advice and I do give that advice. So start with the self, always with do a full diagnostic of yourself. So what are your features? What are your strengths? What are you good at? But also, what do you like doing? So often people go into the mindset, oh, what am I good at and what can I do? Which is great and it's absolutely necessary. But often people forget about what are they passionate about and what are they interested in about. And why I always bring this discussion to this point, because this is where our motivation comes from. So imagine all those books and all those speakers that talk about how to find motivation to do something. Well, guess what? Nobody is looking for motivation to go on Instagram. We just love it. We always find time, to go on Instagram. So if you are in the field, in the area, in the role with the team that you are passionate about, this is going to be a really easier journey. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be easier journey. So respect your passion and respect your interest. I think something that I would like to say. But also going back to, I would love to give maybe a bit more tailored advice to all the young ladies and young women leaders out there. And why would I like to do that? Because the studies show that women tend to have a little bit of more of an imposter syndrome situation, as well as they tend to be a lot more perfectionist-like. And perfectionism never helps. So example, I think Hewlett Packard, they ran a study which has been reconfirmed multiple times, that women would only apply to a position when they meet 100 or 110% of their qualifications. Well, this is not a growth space. This is already, you're overqualified for that. Whereas men often would apply to roles, including leadership roles, manager roles, when they meet 60% of the requirements, and they go for it. And sometimes they get it, but sometimes they don't get it. That's not the point. The point is you have to try. So my advice to everyone out there is, if you see the opportunity that you're looking and you go, maybe I'm only 6 out of 10 or 7 out of 10. This is the time to go. You do not wait for 10 out of 10. That never happens. So this is my second advice.
That's a great advice, and I think it translates to all areas of life.
Absolutely.
Relationships and everything. You should just go Naura, I would say. just go for it. Joe, maybe you can add something to that. Any secret tips or shortcuts how to develop and boost a leadership career?
Yeah, so I mean, I really like what both Vita and Katja have said, I think, just to pick up on that, what I've sort of called self-awareness, really, which is, it's actually not easy to be a leader, a lot of times. So you can, there's a lot of uncertainty. You have to sometimes take decisions that are not popular. It can be quite lonely. In fact, I compare it to like you're this mechanic of a team, right? And this mechanic, you have a lot of pragmatic things. You have things like processes and communication between members and things that are a fairly sort of management type tasks. There's also a lot of emotion, particularly if you're in difficult times, in COVID, or if you're in a startup, things can be pretty hectic. So you're dealing with a lot of emotion. And I think just having that self-awareness and working on your strengths and your weaknesses, I think is invaluable. And just to give a couple of examples, the confidence, a lot of people they really struggle with self-confidence. I have, most of my life, I'm not afraid to say that. And, self-confidence can really hold you back. It can also make it difficult for a team to operate. Again, if you're in a very uncertain environment, and you're trying to get through that in crisis, for example, you do need that leadership, that you need to project personality that gets people to follow you, which is the essence of leadership. So yeah, being self-aware, working on that, understanding that you don't have to be perfect, I think is a good one. Another example would be the opposite, would be ego. If you have very high ego, and the ego often occurs from actually insecurity, funny enough. But if you have very high ego, you could turn into, even if you don't mean to, you could turn into that leader that shuts everybody down because you're just not aware of how you come across. So I think I really resonate with what Vita and Katja said, and self-awareness is very important. Yeah.
Thank you, Joe. I would like to continue with you. Your diverse experience as a captain in the British Army, a crisis manager at AXA Group that has more than 160,000 employees, or consulting leaders, exposed you to so many different personalities and leadership styles. From your experience, let's construct the perfect leader, or let's say, what are the main essential skills without which you couldn't be a successful, effective leader? You mentioned confidence as a good or a bad thing. The essential skills or capabilities that you kind of must have if you want to become a successful leader.
Yeah, cool. So you kind of, Vita and Katja, kind of stolen my thunder on my first one, right? So, which is self-aware. So I'm going to give you two more. I think that's fair. So I think, like I said, the self-awareness, we've got that in the bag now. Another one that I've been thinking about is this idea of long-term planning or strategic planning, or that notion. And really what that is this ability to really look forward. And look at where you want to achieve both yourself, but also where you want your team to be. And again, I'm talking here again of these pragmatic things, right? But numbers, processes, and all that stuff. But really, what I'm talking about is this emotion as well, right? You're basically that mechanic that's creating an environment, right? So in your long-term plan, how do you motivate people? Why do people want to get out of bed in the morning and come and work, with you to achieve a goal? Now, sometimes that's going to be really easy and really clear, and then other times it's going to be really murky and not clear at all. So I think just have a really, as clear as possible long-term strategic plan, and again, whatever that means, whether it means 3 months or 6 months or whatever, that really will depend on the battle rhythm, we call it in the military, but on how quickly you're operating in relation to the environment. So, but then as well, having that long-term plan, then you really want to do day-to-day activities that fit into achieving that plan. And I think that link between, you know, what you do on a day-to-day basis with that direction you want to go in, I think that's critical. Again, just to throw in the military terminology, it's really understanding the difference between the strategic, the operational, and the tactical. And it's really when those levels of thinking, of speed of operations, etc., come together that you really have an effective understanding of your environment and are able to achieve stuff. Once again, things change super quick, so you've got to be organic and able to operate within that environment. Just a quick idea, some people call it the balcony view. So you get really stuck into the day-to-day activities, everything gets a little bit intense. You know, there's again a lot of stuff going on, you're doing all these calls and all these people talking to you all the time, you get really stuck into it, right? So the balcony view is that ability to just take a step back out of that. Some people call it the helicopter view, when you just go above and you look down on it and really just reevaluate, are we going in the right direction on the long term planning, and is our day-to-day activities achieving that? And if not, let's change it. And once again, you know, as a team, that's the type of thing you can work together as a team. And I see that Vita wants to make a point.
Yeah. So if I may sum up, self-awareness, ability to see long-term goals, and also to make sure that the short-term goals help you get there.
Well, I've got one more actually. That was two. They're two very long ones. I've got another one.
Should.
Do you want to go ahead, Vita?
I'll just comment on that part about the balcony, because I thought that's brilliant. And that's links again for those who are listening, if you're interested or if you have such problems, or more like challenges is a more constructive term. In research, it's called adaptive and technical challenges. So what Joe describes is a way to solve an adaptive challenge versus technical. So technical challenges, your computer broke and you're trying to fix it. So it's a clear, straightforward solution, while for adaptive challenges that are more complex in the environment that Joe mentioned, which everything constantly changes, then you need to kind of step back and look from this balcony. So just for those who are interested to work a bit more, if this is something that you are dealing with currently, it's just something to look up to that might be very helpful. So just wanted to add to Joe's brilliant point, by the way.
Is there anything else you would like to add to this perfect leader that we are constructing, Katja, Vita?
I would like to build on, continue on what Joe and Vita mentioned already. So I think I want to go back to the point about the authority. I think, Vita, as you mentioned, how can a young leader build an authority? And I think Joe gave an amazing insight there. But I would actually like to suggest something else instead of authority. I would like to suggest influence. Influence and skills is actually really important, especially if we're talking about the complex environments, complex organizations, where formal authority may not be the case, but you still need to deliver the results. So think about all the currently fluid formats that exist, project groups, work groups, people doing 20% on one project, 20% on another project. They have multiple peers that they engaged with. And formal authority often is not part of that equation. So how can you exercise leadership even without a formal authority? And influencing is obviously one of the ways. So how do you influence? How do you inspire? How do you motivate people? Because if we also talk about the creative industries, right? Knowledge industries, service industries, where the main resource is people minds. You cannot force a people mind to produce a brilliant idea. You can only motivate and inspire and influence them, to give you their best. I think the difference that they give, I think a programmer, a coder, that, the same coder, depending on, on a good day or bad day, can code 10 times the difference, right? And the quality and the amount of a code produced, but you can never force it. You can only, invite this. So how can you invite it as a leader? How can you manage it as a leader? Is not through authority oftentimes.
Very nice. Very good.
I think we will overwhelm all the listeners with the amount of things they have to process, because I'm just reflecting on your question, what you should do. And I'm thinking, actually, I would say completely 3 different things. Because I was, if I had to choose 3 most important skills, I would say that probably I would name communication, listening, and ability to pivot. And the 3rd one will be probably linked with what we can connect with what Joe was saying. It's about when you work in an uncertain environment, like think about now, everyday things are changing, global pandemic situation, all the unpredictable market. You have to be agile, flexible, and able to change and pivot. So probably that's one very core criteria. And then essentially listening and communication again comes, you can put it together, but do we really do that properly? Because there is this quote that I really like, that by James Hume, which says that the art of communication is the language of leadership. And essentially, how can it be a good leader without ability to talk, to communicate, to present, and so on? So at least from my perspective, these would be a few. And I think Joe had one more to add. So just to make people really overwhelmed with the amount of things that they have to possess.
We can possess. Joe, do you have something to add?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, you could come up with hundreds of words, I think, to be a good leader. I think, you can really dissect it to infinity, really. You go down what personality and etc. The only one I had, and we touched on it a little bit, and I really liked actually again what Vita and Katja said about what I'd call projecting personality. So it's creating that leadership, persona that is honest. It has integrity, but it also has enough range to fit, the different issues and problems that you're going to face, problems and opportunities for that matter, actually. But really, it's interesting because I'd say a couple of things. One is integrity is absolutely, I think, the overriding essential thing there. But and that can be difficult. It can be difficult. Like there's that ability, what you say and what you do have to be completely linked, and sometimes that can be actually pretty difficult. Not because you're disingenuous or anything, but just because of the nature of that rapidly changing environment. So projecting personality. And I just think that idea. It really. Leadership, you're dealing with human beings, right? So management is you're dealing with things, okay? Leadership, you're dealing with human beings, and often, a large number of human beings, and it gets incredibly complex. It's an art. Management is a science. Leadership is an art, and it's really difficult. Like even the most experienced leader will be able to fall over and make mistakes. So really understanding that. It's difficult for everybody. It's nobody's perfect. I like the idea of the 6 out of 10. If you're 6 or 7 out of 10, then go for it. Like there's a lot of people that are probably less than a 6 and a 10, but that give the impression that they're 11s. So yeah, that's just working out, projecting that personality. I think would be a 3rd one.
Yeah, and that comes back to the point of self-awareness. If you are a 6, but you feel like 11, that's a problem. But also, if you are an 11 and you feel like a 6, that's more probably also a big problem. So that it relates to perfectionism as well. Now, let's jump to a little bit. Let's look at it from the business side. But before we do, I see some questions are pouring in. I'm happy for that. Keep them coming. And if possible, also try to address the questions. Who you would like from the speakers to answer your question. If possible, it would make things easier. So now from the business side, what companies what expectations do they have for leaders when hiring people into executive positions? And do those expectations, and Vita, I'm pointing this question at you to begin with, do this expectation differ if we talk about startups, small or medium enterprises, or large companies?
This is a very good question. And this is a question we actually asked executives at companies last year. So with ISM last year, we did a focus group. So various executives, very senior people from various organizations, and asked exactly this question. So when a young new person comes to this leadership role, what do you expect? What do they have to do? And essentially the consensus between our respondents was that most of them come to this leadership role with a very good technical skill, so they can perform the job even if they think they don't have it, like they can. But the issues and what they really lack was the softer skills, and the ones that were mentioned were emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, being able to work and motivate with people. So these are the softer skills that no one often teaches you when you are in a particular role. There was no particular difference between, let's say, startups, SMEs, and corporates, at least as far as the question we posed to them, with exception of one aspect, which was that in a startups, there's also was a bigger criteria, bigger need for these young professionals to be able to deal with uncertainty and work without clearly defined roles or tasks, and being able to be flexible with what you have to do. So that was the only difference compared to, let's say, SMEs or the corporates.
Okay, thank you for that. Katja, Joe, maybe you have something to add to that.
+1 to everything that Vita said. I would probably highlight the corporate side of things. That's where a lot of my experience coming from. I would say stakeholder management doesn't sound as maybe one of the hottest skill out there, but it's probably day-to-day requirement for a successful leader. So you need to, in a big corporate environment, you have multiple layers: strategic, operational, you have your peer group, you have, ambiguity as well as going on, pandemic, different goals and objectives. You need to be really good at relationship building and managing multiple teams that you don't have authority over. So again, we're going back to ability to influence and to manage relationships in a softer kind of way. So yes, stakeholder management, if I had to add just one.
Okay, anything to add, Joe?
Just that. I think that I'd say that point is absolutely correct. For me, like sort of hiring is it's really all about the fit, right? So obviously you get the fit in terms of technical ability. You can work that out relatively quickly, but the fit, the personality fit, and again, it's the same things that Katja were talking about. Is really for me is the first and foremost. So are they? All those soft skills, like I said, and are they the right soft skills in relation to the team that you already have? I think that's what I'd say.
Okay, I have the penultimate question, I guess. Let's talk about the past, the present, and the future. What does it mean to be a leader? What did it mean some, let's say, 5-10 years ago? How is it different from today? But more importantly, what will it mean in 5 or 10 years? And Joe, maybe you can elaborate on that. What kind of challenges should people prepare for that are maybe different from the ones that you could face today? So what it is important to have in mind looking to the future? How is it going to be different?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. For me, just again, I said it earlier, but just to make the difference between leadership and management, I think leadership is this art, and you're dealing with human beings. Management is things, and I think what we've seen actually in the last couple of years. So you asked me about the future, but I'll just go to the last couple of years. Really, we've seen a complete change in the work environment. Right, there's a complete cultural change, really unprecedented, and there's been a lot of challenges, and a lot of those challenges have been technical, getting people to work remotely and stuff. But I'd argue that the most challenging has been, really been, dealing with people, keeping them motivated. There's been a lot of mental health issues over the last few years, more than before. So I would say that, that core thing of dealing with the people and not really hiding behind processes, like not hiding behind management, but really focusing on dealing with the human element. To be honest, I think the nature of it is going to change. And I mean, I can't really predict the future any more than the craziness that we're going through already. But I think what's going to stay the same is needing to be on top of, managing that human element. So even if you're in a large organization, which is really, process driven, really, don't be shy of, really getting stuck into that, dealing with people's, again, emotions and that humanity.
Thank you, Joe. Katya, maybe do you have something to add to that?
I think to Joe's point, it's actually, he beautifully put it on a spectrum. We managed people in the past, we manage people now, and we'll be managing people and humans in the future, right? So that remains the same. And humans haven't really evolved that much if you think about it. So we still have our, motivation, our desires, our priorities. So how do you hear what is important to people? How do you show them that you care? And then how can you take their motivation, so internal motivation of your team, of your fellowship, align it with the goals of the mission of the task that is ahead of you, and then you deliver together. So to marry this to you need to be emotionally intelligent, be able to listen, to hear what people are sharing with you and what they actually mean. But you also have to have your eyes, on the task, and you have to bring those two together. I would say that one of the top two skills that have became really sort of hot in the last couple of years is coaching. So, and I think coaching is coaching. So managers are expected to be coaches. So not just managers, but also to have coaching abilities, to coach their teams to get better. But also resilience. So to Joe's point, we've been through a hard couple of years. We're still in the hard situation. So how do you help your teams, people around you to be more resilient and build that as a skill? So I would mention those two. Amazing.
It's pleasing to hear that people haven't evolved that much. Vita, do you agree? Or do you think it's more difficult?
Yes, absolutely. And I wanted to,
or generation, whatever is coming.
I wanted to add to the Katya's point about leader as a coach, because there is even a separate school of thought now in amongst leadership scholars that saying that leader has to be a coach now, not a leader anymore. So it's very interesting. And then two more points probably to add to what both speakers, what both Joe and Katya said, is one, just something to be aware of if you are going into that role is kind of new hybrid or virtual working environment, because that changes the way leadership works a little bit. When before, in the past, we're researching transformational, transactional, authentic, and other leadership areas. Now, when you look at leadership, there's a new leadership fields appear, like e-leadership, digital leadership, Industry 4.0 leadership, and so on. So there is just something that if you're going there now, probably in a couple of more years, you will be classed as completely different leadership style leader compared to, let's say, 5, 10, or 20 years ago. And two is this AI and data and the growth, and essentially how that affects your leadership, because now we make decisions based on the data on a daily basis. There is artificial intelligence, software, tools, and techniques that are part of our day-to-day life. So again, how do you integrate that in your decision-making in leadership if part of your team is AI? So you're managing not only humans, but also people. So there is just these considerations that affect leadership that are natural if you're stepping into the role now. That will be something that you'll have to be working around and with.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Let's now tackle some questions from the audience. And I would like to start with Milda's question. Hi guys, she says, question, how to find enough confidence to become a leader in a big FMCG, fast moving consumer good company, when you are one of the youngest within the team plus least experienced? Raise your hand if you would like to tackle this one. Go ahead.
Okay, Milda, first of all, congratulations on landing the new exciting role. But also, when I talk about confidence, I would like to remind people that you don't wait to become confident and then act. Confidence comes from action. Action always comes first. Example, bicycle. You are not riding a bicycle. You are not waiting to become confident and then you jump on a bicycle. No. You take a bicycle, you go, you fall a couple of times, maybe you get somebody holding you for a little bit. As you start, riding around, you become confident at this. A leader is the same thing. So, you're exercising this new skill that will take the rest of your life, to get better, to improve, to learn about. It's not something that you just become overnight. It's a journey. So imagine you're managing a team, right? You're establishing a brand. So get a mentor, ask for help, have somebody, to, provide you this extra support at this initial stages, right? But also, you are going to be making mistakes and it's fine. It's part of the learning. Nobody is born a great manager or a great leader. It's, for the first time, you're going to have somebody on your team coming to you and telling you maybe some really dark news in their family, and you will have to learn how to manage this. And maybe later you will go through a reorganization and you will learn how to manage that. And then 10 years later, you already, done a lot of this, and you're still going to be asking yourself, how am I going to be a more confident leader? Because now you will be managing a global business, and you've probably never done that before. So confidence comes from action first. So have a plan, commit to it, and fake it until you make it.
Amazing. It's hard to add something, but would anyone like to try? No. Amazing. Thank you, Katja. That was awesome. Another question from Daiva. How to motivate and inspire a team? Joe, I see you moving in your seat, shuffling ideas how to answer that one.
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot to say on that. I'll give a few things. I think what springs to mind, one is creating this unifying purpose, right? So really creating this explanation of what you're doing and where you're going, and it has to be a fairly, not necessarily optimistic, but a positive look forward to where you're going, right? So this idea of unifying purpose has to be very clear. It has to be reinforced. It has to be developed as a team. So one is unifying purpose, I would say. The other one, just to give two actually, the other one would be that leadership personality that you're projecting, right? That's going to be essential to motivating people. People, I think, need to trust you. They need to want to follow you. Again, that definition of leadership. And so things like integrity, are paramount. And you could be really of all sorts of different types of personalities. You could be a complete extrovert and be a great leader. You can be a total introvert. Some of the best leaders that I've known were very, very quiet, very withdrawn, but you really trusted in them. You really believed when they opened their mouth, like you were like, you really listened to them. So yeah, I mean, just those two things: unifying purpose, that leadership quality or personality you're projecting, and then you probably have another 3-hour conversation about another 100 points.
Vita,
would you like to add something, or would you like a question of your own?
No, I was just reflecting on what Joe was saying, which was brilliant. And to be honest, this will sound a bit soft, but a very important point is actually authenticity. When I work with leaders, the problem is that they try to pick the leadership style or be certain leader, the way they saw leadership examples and so on, which does not always work. And when I say authentic, doesn't mean that you need to be very light on people or so on. It's more about finding your strengths and building on these strengths. So for example, if you're a person who is naturally charismatic, maybe use that charisma to motivate the team. If you're a person who's really good at actually team building and kind of working with people and being a peer-to-peer to them, then probably that will be your strength. If that's not part of you, and probably you're more a person who's further away from your team, again, maybe building on that and building the structures that allows you to organize something for people to be happy, but not necessarily involving yourself into that. It's just finding what makes you and your strengths and then building on them, which a lot of people just don't spend any time reflecting and trying to take a model that works elsewhere. And yeah, in leadership, there is no one style fits all. So you need to think about your team and what would work for you and for your team.
Amazing. Thank you for that. One more good question, and I'm looking for a raised hand who would like to tackle that one. It applies to everyday life as well. Good evening. How to talk to people who have absolutely no knowledge of listening to people and only have their own views, ideas, and so on. Who think they're always right, and how to talk to such people? Katya, maybe you have a
I'll try. I don't have the answer. If I had the answer, I would probably be the most influential person in the world. But I have some ideas to offer. Well, first of all, the question is, do you have to be talking to that person?
Let's assume that probably yes. I guess it's
okay.
a working environment.
But to be honest, I would like to ask a person, you know, if it's, for example, it's in a personal environment, maybe it's, you know, in whatever scenario that is. Sometimes we have choices that we don't, you know, maybe they're not comfortable choices, but maybe we do have a choice actually not to engage with somebody who is not responsive, not engaging, toxic potentially. So I'm not saying you have to do it, but I would like to remind that we always have an option, a choice in whatever situation, okay? But also, so how do you involve with a person who is just, you know, has their own ideas? I would love for you to listen to them. And when you listen to that person, I would like for you to summarize, observe, and give back what they told you. So that they, you know, and then you try and add your own interpretation to that. So this is one of the coaching techniques. So basically you invite in, you know, for a person not to engage with their own ideas is very hard. People like what they're saying and they love, you know, hearing back what they, you know, how they came across. So without, you know, being aggressive or without challenging it right away, you listen, but you genuinely listen yourself, observe, summarize, bring it back, and then offer your interpretation and or a question on the top of it. And hopefully that will kick off a dialogue. Again, one of the many, many routes you can go, but it's not an easy situation. Let me just acknowledge it.
All right. Very quick question I still want to squeeze in from Ida. My question would be, is leadership about making friends, being everywhere, being loud, full of ideas, and the soul of the company? Or is it more about good working and top results?
Neither. It depends on a context. It's such a contextual thing that it's again, I'm going back to my point that there is no one size fits all in leadership. And it depends on a company you work for, on yourself as a leader, and on your expectations from the team. So I would say that it can be all of that or none of that.
I can offer a controversial point and a hard one, and I think Joe mentioned that as well. Leadership often is about making decisions, which will lead to the goal attainment. So why do we need a leader? We have a goal that we would like to achieve. And to achieve that goal, we need to make decisions. And making decisions which are sometimes tough but right is not going to make you friends. So I don't think leadership is about making friends or about being liked, which I think can be a hard notion to accept sometimes. But that's just my personal opinion about it.
All right, unfortunately, time is running out, and I think that is it with the questions. Some information that you probably missed at the beginning because we had some sound issues. So quick summary is that this event is the first out of 7 mastermind sessions based on focused on innovation, marketing, leadership, and finance fields. We are inviting you to join other events, and you can find information on Facebook page of ISM. Also, if you are thinking about applying for master's degree at ISM, it's a good time because now you can get an early bird fee. And if you want some more information about that, don't hesitate to contact us at msc.ism.lt. January is the best month to do it, so make sure you test your opportunities because you can also get some financing options and also a better price. Yeah, let's see, we have 4 more minutes. So one last question, but I would like to finish on. So we talked, if I could summarize very briefly what stood out for me: self-awareness, long-term goals versus short-term goals. If you are 6 out of 10, that is good enough. And grow into the position if you can. What else? And people, being a leader is working with people. So people did not change all that much. So it's important to learn how to listen and how to influence people. I guess that's those are the main points that stand out to me. Hopefully something else as well for our listeners. So if you may, I would like to ask you to give some final advice, short advice from each one of you to people who are listening, to people who are dreaming and planning on becoming best leaders they possibly can. So Joe, if we could start with you.
Yeah, because I'll just pick up, actually, there was one question about confidence, which really stood out for me. So just, and I really like Katja's answer. I thought it was spot on. So I'll pick up on that really. I'll just basically copy what Katja said and say, just go for it. Like, I think, it is difficult. I think everybody finds it difficult, and you only get good at it by trying, by giving it a go. And it is really baby steps. Like Katja used the example of the bicycle. I say, like, if you're really unfit, you're not going to start with 100 push-ups, right? You're going to start with 1 push-up. You do 1 push-up, you realize that actually it wasn't that bad 1 push-up, you feel a little bit better about yourself, and the next day you do 2, and then you do 3. So that's what I say. Do some push-ups.
Vita, final words.
I would like to refer back to the point I made at the beginning about leader identity formation, and just suggest that imagine it's like a spiral which can go up, positive, or down, negative. So essentially, if something blocks your leadership identity development, that will be the negative aspect. So I encourage everyone to focus on this positive and reinforce your leadership development. And you do that by learning from mistakes, the point that Katja said, but being confident, the point that Joe made, and being brave, as we say at ISM, that courage is the new black. So I suggest and recommend and advise everybody to try and do that.
Amazing. And Katja?
Thank you. I'm gonna give the last advice on how to increase your luck. So I know oftentimes people's like, oh, but I didn't get lucky, or oh, they got lucky. So here is your secret ingredient, how to harvest the most luck possible. So there is this theory that luck is like a sail. So luck is like a wind. It's always in the air. So it's all around you, and you can't really own the whole air. You can't really direct it, or it's force of nature. But what you can do, you can put out your sail like a ship, and you can try and increase your sail even more, like make it as big as possible, so you can catch the most luck possible. In human terms, that means say yes to opportunities, say yes to challenges. Say yes to leadership summits, conferences. Say yes to the role that you are excited but not comfortable with. This is you increasing that sail and trying to catch your luck, your next point of contact, your next interview, your next position, or business idea. So thank you.
Amazing. Luck is when opportunity meets preparation, is what I heard. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you to the spectators who joined the ISM Zoom platform and also on Delfi television. And the greatest appreciation to our three wonderful speakers. Let me reintroduce them once again. Thank you, Vita Akstanaitė, Global Leadership and Strategy Program Director at ISM and a leadership expert. Thank you for joining. Also, Joe McMahon, COO at Same Solutions, ex-military advisor to United Arab Emirates, Armed Forces, and visiting professor at ISM. Thank you, Joe, so much. And finally, Katya Lisionak, ISM alumna and internal mobility partner and career coach at Google. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining. See you in the next events. Goodbye.